My son, Daniel, yelled those words at me like they were his final message. Just go die. I'm done with you. I didn't even blink or question him. I just slung my purse over my shoulder and walked out the door. No tears, no farewell. He stood there in the hallway, smirking like he'd finally beaten me at some game. But I wasn't leaving because I was shattered. I'd simply had enough. That evening, I didn't bother packing a suitcase. I grabbed my purse, phone, charger, and keys. That's it. The groceries I just bought stayed on the counter. The laundry pile? Not my concern anymore. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and for the first time in ages, I felt this weight lift off my chest. This whole mess started 4 months back when Daniel, 24, jobless and dodging responsibility like it was a disease, stumbled across some online guru peddling a fantasy life. One live stream, and he was all in. Fancy cars, piles of fake cash, and bold claims about how the system's stacked against you unless you're a true hustler. The guy's pitch always ended with, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. What's one life lesson everyone needs before it's too late? Daniel ate it up. The mentor called parents energy drainers, and told kids to ditch anyone who didn't cheer on their dreams. My son soaked up every word like it was holy writ. He started spitting out lines like, chores are for low-wage losers. If they're not funding you, they're holding you back. He quit helping around the house entirely, sleeping all day and glued to his screen all night. He joined Zoom calls with other dream chasers, all yelling, let's do this, like they just solved world hunger. I tried to tell him to take it slow, to dig into the guy's website. It was all stock images, fake countdown timers, and reviews that screamed scam. I pointed it out, but he just laughed and called me a doubter. He said I was jealous of his potential. That stung, not because it was mean, but because he meant it. He stared right at me and said I'd been a failure my whole life, like working 2 jobs to raise him was something to be embarrassed about. Like he forgot the nights I went hungry so he could have a full plate. Then came the charges, first $2,500, then $4,000, pulled straight from my bank account. My name. I burst into his room, my heart pounding, but before I could get a word out, he just grinned and said, "What, you noticed?" Like it was no big deal, like I was overreacting. "It's an investment, Mom," he said. "You'll get it back ×3. I gave him 48 hours to sort it out. He stood up, got right in my face, and told me I was dragging him down, that I was the one leeching off him. Then he shouted it, loud and vicious, "Just die." I don't care. I looked at him, and it wasn't my boy anymore. It was someone who'd bought his own lies. So I smiled, because it was finally done. He thought I walked out because I was weak. He didn't realize I was strong enough to let him crash on his own. It all began like every other con, not with a hard sell, but with sweet talk. Daniel first found the guy on TikTok, with his slick hair, flashy gold watch, and cheesy lines like, "Money's just paper. Confidence is king." My son, who couldn't hold a job for more than a few months, was hooked instantly. He watched every video, saved every post, and when the guy dangled an exclusive mentorship, Daniel was ready to fork over cash without even glancing at the fine print. He showed me the website like it was the Bible, a ticking timer, testimonials from sketchy usernames with photos that looked computer-made, and wild promises about turning a few $100 into millions by knowing secrets the big shots hide. I told him to hold off, that legit businesses don't need fake urgency. But he didn't want reason. He wanted to feel like he mattered. The guy's words hit every sore spot Daniel had. He said college was for suckers, parents were brainwashed, and family who didn't back your grind were just vampires. My son latched onto it because it let him point the finger at me for every problem in his life. It started small, $79 for some PDF course. Then $149 for a Zoom call about strategy. I overheard a bit of it, the scammer saying, "You're the kind of guy I'd team up with for the long haul. You've got that alpha vibe." Daniel glowed like he'd been handed a crown. That one line meant more to him than anything I'd ever said. It gave him a fake sense of importance. He started calling himself a digital entrepreneur and bragged about building some client funnel system. When I asked what that even meant, he rolled his eyes and said, "It's passive income, Mom. You wouldn't understand." I understood fine, I just wasn't buying the hype. But he only listened to his mentor. Over the next few weeks, I saw him change. He'd sleep until 3 p.m., then stay up all night, blasting motivational music and pacing his room like he was wired. He stopped washing his clothes, ignored the dinners I cooked. He told me I was stuck in the past, that I'd be gone before the economy tanked, whatever that was supposed to mean. He'd rant about vibrations and scarcity mindsets. Every time I mentioned a real bill, he refused to chip in for rent, saying I should be investing in his future instead. I was watching my son vanish into a one-man cult. The mentor dropped a video boasting that his elite students were raking in thousands in just 20 days. Daniel bought it because he needed to believe it. He wasn't earning a dime, but he couldn't face that truth. So he doubled down. I later found out he'd opened 2 credit cards in his name just to keep paying for upgrades. But that wasn't enough. One night, while I was sleeping, he used my old laptop's saved bank info and sent $7,000 to some company I'd never heard of. When I confronted him the next morning, he didn't say sorry. He just smirked and said, "It's an investment. You'll thank me later." I didn't yell or cry. I called the bank, filed a fraud report, and locked my account. He flipped out, accused me of ruining his dreams, said I was stealing his future. I told him the only thing I'd ever stolen was his dirty socks off the floor. He didn't crack a smile. That night, he posted a video to his tiny following, ranting about how toxic parents destroy high-value men. That's when it hit me, he wasn't just lost. He was choosing to sink. He genuinely believed this guy, who rented a fancy penthouse and sold overpriced courses to broke kids, was going to make him a millionaire. I'd catch Daniel recording voice messages for that mentor, spilling his hopes and begging for guidance. He never got a single reply, but that didn't faze him. He felt like a big shot just sending them. One morning, he stormed into the kitchen, eyes all lit up, claiming he was inches away from landing a partnership. "I'm so close, Mom," he said. When I asked what this partnership even was, he admitted he wasn't sure yet but insisted I needed to send the full payment today to secure it. I flat out refused. He lost it, yelling that I was envious because I never dared to chase anything big. He accused me of wanting him to crash and burn. I told him I just wanted him to open his eyes. He snapped, "Forget it, I'm done with you." When I warned him he was torching his last lifeline, he didn't even pause. He grabbed my bags, not his, mine, and told me to get out. That's when I knew that conman mentor had taken my place in his heart. What Daniel didn't realize was that the guy he trusted so blindly was about to disappear without a trace. After I walked out, he partied like he'd won something huge. He posted an Instagram video from the kitchen where I used to make his meals, holding a mug that read, "Boss Energy," grinning like he'd just claimed his independence. His caption said, "Cut out toxic people, even if they're your mom. Time to rise up." He didn't just block my number. He erased me from his life like I was nothing, bragging to his small online crowd about cutting out negative vibes. Meanwhile, I was sleeping on a friend's couch, trying to sort out the fraud mess with my bank and stop the auto payments he'd set up before I froze my card. That $7,000 was long gone. The bank said I had a shot at a claim, but no promises since the transfer came from my old laptop, a recognized device. It didn't matter that my own son had swiped it. The account was in my name, and he'd taken everything he could before kicking me out like I was trash. From afar, I saw him posting daily motivational clips, always in the same clothes, same spot in the apartment, but now I wasn't there folding his towels or bringing him coffee he never thanked me for. His girlfriend, Sophia, 22 and starry-eyed, moved in the second I was gone. She was all in on the mentor too, and from her videos, I could tell she thought they'd be the next big influencer couple. They'd film TikToks with her on his lap, calling him CEO, while he flashed stacks of cash, probably borrowed or fake. The scammer preached, "Show wealth or stay broke," and they followed it like gospel. A cousin we both know told me Daniel was bragging about getting flown to Singapore for client meetings, claiming he was a top earner in the program. It was all lies, but he needed those lies more than air. The more I watched, the clearer it got. He wasn't just shutting me out, he was replacing me. He said Sophia had his back, unlike me, that she was his ride or die. But I knew that kind of loyalty only holds up until the cash runs dry. What he didn't see was that his world was falling apart. The mentor kept demanding more payments for advanced coaching and tax strategy sessions. Daniel kept paying, convinced a huge payout was just around the bend. I learned from the bank that 2 new fast cash loan apps, with sky-high 25% interest, were linked to my frozen card. He wasn't just stealing my money, he was borrowing against it, digging himself into a hole he'd never climb out of. Sophia didn't know yet. But there were signs of trouble. In one video, she commented, "Where's the cash, LOL," and he deleted it fast. In another, she stopped sharing his live streams like she used to. She started posting solo selfies with captions like "boss babe vibes," and no mention of him. That's how I knew she was pulling away. He didn't notice, too busy adding voiceovers about how belief is the only currency that counts. Meanwhile, the fridge in his videos was empty. One live stream glitched, and I spotted a pile of unpaid bills and red eviction notices taped to the wall. He didn't even try to hide them, he was too lost in his fantasy. A neighbor I used to chat with sent me a message one night. She said she heard shouting from the apartment about rent and lies, and someone yelling, "Where's the money?" I didn't need to hear more. I knew what was coming. The mentor had dangled a major partnership if Daniel could prove he had $8,000 ready to go. That was the final trap. My son, desperate to keep up appearances for Sophia and his 600 followers who thought he was on the brink of glory, was about to fall for it again. He thought he was calling the shots. But he didn't realize that when it all came crashing down, there'd be no one left to catch him, not Sophia, not his buddies, not me, and definitely not that mentor who'd been planning to vanish from the start. The morning it all fell apart, he was still riding high, pacing the apartment in his bathrobe, reciting the mentor's latest voice memo like it was sacred. "This is your time, kings. This deposit will change your legacy forever." He just sent nearly $8,000 from those loan apps to some new company, something called Next Gen Ventures. The mentor promised confirmation by 10 a.m. sharp. Daniel sat at the kitchen counter like a kid waiting for Santa, refreshing his email every few seconds, pacing, sweating, telling Sophia, "They're announcing my big promotion today." She didn't look convinced, just scrolled on her phone, barely acknowledging him. When he asked her to film him opening the email for a video, she said, "Only if you actually get something this time." That should have been a red flag, but he brushed it off. 10 o'clock came and went. Nothing. No email, no text, no call. By 11 a.m., still silence. He started checking every app, hunting for any sign. The Discord server for the mentor's elite ments he was so proud of. Gone. Deleted. The Telegram chat? Wiped clean, no admins, no messages. He kept refreshing, over and over, but nothing came up. Sophia asked, "Did you send the money through a website?" He said, "No, it was a private wallet. It's safer that way." Sophia just locked eyes with Daniel, not even blinking, and asked, "You got some kind of receipt for that, right?" He shrugged and said, "They don't do receipts, it's all crypto." She turned and walked out of the kitchen without a word. He hurried after her, insisting, "It's just a timing issue. They're in Singapore, you know, different time zones." She spun around and snapped, "Singapore's 5 hours ahead, genius." He tried dialing the mentor's number, but it went straight to voicemail, over and over, nothing but silence from the guy who used to send him pep talks. Desperate, he opened his laptop to check the mentor's old videos, but every single one was gone, Instagram blank, Twitter erased, YouTube wiped clean. Daniel's stomach churned as he scrolled through his email, hoping for some trace, some overlooked message that could explain this. Nothing. Not even a spam folder relic. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly as he typed the mentor's name, Elliot Kane, into Google. The search returned a few outdated articles, a LinkedIn profile that hadn't been updated in years, and a slew of unrelated results. It was as if Elliot had evaporated overnight, leaving nothing but a digital ghost. Sophia leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, her voice low but sharp. "You sent how much to this guy, Daniel? Tell me again." He avoided her gaze, staring at the laptop screen. "It was an investment," he mumbled. 10 grand. He said it'd triple in 6 months. Elite mentorship, access to his network, the works. His voice trailed off, weaker with every word, as if saying it out loud made the truth heavier. $10,000? Sophia's voice cracked, a mix of disbelief and fury. "You sent 10 grand to some internet guru you've never met? In crypto? Daniel, what were you thinking?" She stepped closer, her shadow falling across the table. "You didn't even Google him properly, did you?" "I did," he shot back, but his confidence faltered. He had testimonials, Sophia. Videos, live streams, a whole community. People were posting about their wins, stocks, crypto, real estate. It was legit. She repeated, her tone flat. "And now it's all gone, and you're left with what? A private wallet transaction you can't trace?" She shook her head, pacing the small living room. "This is why I told you to stick to index funds. Boring, sure, but at least you don't get fleeced by some Singaporean con artist." "He's not a con artist," Daniel said, but the words sounded hollow even to him. He pulled up the blockchain explorer, checking the transaction hash he'd saved in his notes. The funds had moved, confirmed, irreversible, into a wallet that now sat empty, the crypto funneled somewhere else, untraceable. His heart sank deeper with every click. Sophia stopped pacing and looked at him, her expression softening just a fraction. "Okay, let's think. Did he ever give you anything real? A contract, a name, an address? Anything we can use to track him?" Daniel rubbed his temples, trying to recall. "He mentioned a company once. Apex Ventures, I think. Said it was registered in Singapore. And there was a Zoom call, but it was always him talking, never showing his office or anything specific." He paused, a memory flickering. "Wait. He sent me a PDF once, some kind of elite member agreement. I didn't read it all, but it had a logo, some fine print." "Find it," Sophia said, her voice urgent. "Now." He dug through his downloads folder, heart pounding, until he found it, apex_ventures_elite_agreement.pdf. He opened it, scanning the text. It was polished, professional looking, with a sleek logo and dense legal jargon. But as he read closer, the details were vague, no specific addresses, no verifiable names, just buzzwords like synergistic growth and exclusive wealth pathways. At the bottom, a signature, Elliot Kane, CEO. Sophia peered over his shoulder. "This looks like it was made in Canva by a high schooler. Did you even check if Apex Ventures is real?" I assumed," Daniel admitted, his face flushing. He typed Apex Ventures Singapore into the search bar. The results were a mess, unrelated companies, defunct websites, and a few forum posts warning about crypto scams with similar names. Nothing matched Elliot's operation. Sophia sighed, sitting down beside him. "Okay, Daniel. We're not giving up yet. We need to report this. Crypto scams are tricky, but there's a chance we can flag the wallet or something. And we're checking every detail you've got on this guy. Emails, screenshots, anything." Daniel nodded, but the weight of his mistake pressed harder. He opened his email again, searching for any scrap of communication from Elliot. One email caught his eye, buried months back, with a subject line, "Your next step to millions." It was the first message Elliot had sent, promising mentorship, wealth, and a proven system. At the time, it had felt like a lifeline. Now, it read like a trap. As he clicked through, a new notification popped up on his phone. A DM from an unknown Telegram account, no profile picture, just a string of numbers. The message was simple: want your money back? Meet me in Singapore. Details to follow. Daniel froze, his thumb hovering over the screen. Sophia, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You need to see this. It was like the guy had never even existed. Sophia came back and asked, are you telling me this dude ghosted you after you sent him $8,000? He mumbled, no, it's not like that. He's working on something huge, just switching things up. She stared at him like he was a fragile glass figurine, cracked, transparent, ready to shatter. Then she said the words that hit like a brick, you got played, didn't you? He couldn't respond, frozen, because admitting it meant everything. His image, his brand, his swagger, was built on nothing but hot air. He sank to the floor, not sobbing or falling apart, just hollow, like someone had yanked out his batteries. His brain kept scrambling for some way out, some excuse to cling to, anything to keep the dream alive. But the clues had been there all along. The mentors talk about cutting weak links and going off-grid to build the empire sounded so slick back then. Now it just felt like a rehearsed getaway plan. He checked his banking app, negative balance, loan interest piling up fast, no savings, no credit, no one to turn to, especially not me, since he'd blocked me. Sophia asked what his next move was, and he said, I'll sort it out. She pressed, how exactly? He just repeated, I'll figure something out. That's when she started packing, calm and quiet, no drama. She grabbed her skincare stuff, her charger, her laptop, and one of her jackets. He looked up and said, hold on, you're leaving? She replied, I'm not sticking around with a guy who lost it all to someone called NextGen. He called her shallow, his voice sharp. She shot back that she was done playing pretend with a guy who couldn't even cover his own Uber. Then she walked out, simple as that. He didn't run after her, not because he didn't care, but because he was stuck, like his feet were glued to the floor. For the first time in years, he had no plan, no script, no fake success to prop him up. The apartment was quiet, filled only with broken dreams, red-stamped bills, and the faint smell of something burning on the stove he'd forgotten to turn off. For the first time, he felt what it was to be truly alone, not by chance, but because of his own choices. The day he told me to die was the day he pushed away the one person who'd have stayed by his side. Sophia didn't make a scene when she left, no slamming doors or yelling. She just zipped her bag, slung it over her shoulder, and said, good luck, Daniel, like he was some stranger she'd forget by tomorrow. A week later, he was still on the floor, laptop open, screen fading to black. For the first time in weeks, he couldn't keep up the act. No more live streams, no more voice memos, no more building, just bills, silence, and the heavy sound of his own thoughts crowding in. He kept thinking Sophia might come back, maybe just needed a breather. But when he checked the fridge, her favorite snacks were gone. The closet was empty too, no backup toothbrush, nothing. She'd known it was over, she just waited for the moment to slip away without a fight. That first night alone hit him harder than he expected. He tried to sleep, but the bed felt too big, too quiet. The router's red blinking light screamed that the Wi-Fi bill was overdue. The room felt colder, like it was shrinking around him. He kept glancing at the door, half hoping for a knock, even though he hadn't talked to a real friend in weeks. His phone only buzzed with payment reminders, nothing else. In the corner sat a shoebox stuffed with unopened mail he'd ignored, credit card statements, bank notices, loan demands. He finally tore into them, and the numbers made his stomach drop. One letter showed his cash loan app balance had ballooned from $2,000 to $3,200 in just 10 days. Another gave him 5 days before collections came knocking. That's when the panic started, not loud, but slow and gnawing, like acid burning through his chest. He called the bank, begging them to reverse the transfers, but they said once the money's gone, it's gone. He tried claiming fraud, but they asked if he'd authorized the payment. He couldn't answer, lied and said no, but they said that wasn't enough. He hung up, tried calling Sophia, blocked. Texted an old coworker, left on read. Even emailed the mentor support team. The email bounced right back. Everything was collapsing around him. He didn't eat that day, didn't shower, just sat there replaying the last few weeks. All those times he bragged about getting rich, trashed, broke mindsets, mocked me for my regular job. Now he couldn't even afford a bar of soap. The second day was even worse. A message from the apartment management said rent was 4 weeks late. Another from the power company screamed final notice. He'd never dealt with those bills, I always had. He used to scoff when I reminded him about the electric bill. Now he was staring at shut-off warnings like they were written in code. He tried pawning his old camera gear, the stuff he used for his content, but the pawn shop guy offered just $30 for the lot, old model, no market for it. He took the cash anyway, spent it on instant noodles and gas. He stopped posting online, knowing his silence would raise eyebrows, but he couldn't fake the hustle anymore. The weight of pretending was heavier than the failure itself. On the third day, he hit rock bottom. He found my old emergency stash, $150 I'd hidden behind the pantry drawer for real crises. He tore it out like it belonged to him, no second thoughts, not even a flicker of guilt about what it was for. Daniel blew that cash on some cheap food, gas, and another desperate subscription to a sketchy crypto flipping channel promising a financial comeback. Deep down, he knew it was a scam, but he still held on to this tiny hope that one lucky break would turn it all around. That night, he finally cracked. Standing in front of the mirror, he said it out loud for the first time, I used her. No tears, no apologies. He just stated it like it was a cold, hard truth, because it was. He'd leaned on me for money, for chores, for emotional support, for a roof over his head, for someone to point the finger at when things went wrong. Every time he stumbled, I was there to cushion the fall. Every time he lashed out, I let it go. When he yelled at me to die, it wasn't just anger, it was him giving himself the green light to cut me out. He thought ditching me would make him feel like a king. Instead, it left him alone with nothing but the sound of his own voice bouncing off the walls and the bitter sting of failure no one else would mop up. Even if I picked up his call now, even if I came back to fix his mess, he knew one thing for certain. My eyes wouldn't hold the same warmth for him. And maybe, just maybe, he'd lost the right to be looked at with love. By the end of the week, the electricity got shut off. No heads up, just a loud thud from the breaker outside, then dead silence. No hum from the fridge, no lights, no Wi-Fi. The cold settled in fast, along with the stench of spoiled food rotting in the fridge. He sat in the dark for a bit, hoping maybe the power would flicker back on, like he could wish it back to life, but nothing changed. He called the power company, and they told him the account was flagged for unpaid bills and ignored notices. He promised to pay next week, but they said next week wouldn't cut it. After that, he drove to a gas station to juice up his phone, sitting in the parking lot watching the battery icon creep up like it was taunting him. He hadn't eaten a proper meal in 2 days, the instant noodles were gone, the pantry empty. He rolled through a McDonald's drive-thru, but his card got declined. He stared at the dashboard, the red glow of the low fuel warning mocking him. The cashier's voice still echoed in his head, flat and unyielding, "Sir, it's not going through. You got another card?" He didn't. Just the one, and it was as useless as the empty wallet in his pocket. He muttered an apology and peeled out of the drive-thru, the smell of fries lingering like a cruel joke. Back in the gas station lot, he leaned his head against the steering wheel, the cold plastic grounding him for a moment. His phone was at 12% now, enough to make a call or two, but who was left to call? His sister had already bailed him out twice this year, and her last text was clear, "No more loans, Jake. Get it together." His buddies from the warehouse days had scattered, some moved, some just stopped answering. The only name left in his contacts who might pick up was Ray, the guy who always had a scheme, always had a sure thing, that never panned out. Jake scrolled to Ray's number, hesitated, then hit call. It rang 5 times before Ray's gravelly voice came through. "Yo, Jake, you alive? Been a minute." Yeah, barely, Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. I'm in a bind, man. Power's out, card's dead, and I'm running on fumes. You got anything going on? A job, a gig, anything? Ray chuckled, the sound low and knowing. You sound rough, brother. Tell you what, meet me at the diner on 17th in an hour. Got a guy who needs a driver, no questions asked. Cash up front, but it's, let's say, high risk, high reward. You in? Jake's gut twisted. Ray's deals always came with strings, shady ones. Last time he got involved, he spent a week looking over his shoulder, convinced every cop car was coming for him. But the alternative was another night in the dark, stomach growling, with nothing but the hum of the gas station's neon sign for company. What kind of driving? Jake asked, already knowing he wouldn't like the answer. Details at the diner, Ray said. Bring your car, clean license, and don't be late. Oh, and Jake? Don't bring your conscience. The line went dead. Jake sat back, the phone slipping into his lap. He glanced at the glove compartment, where he kept a crumpled photo of him and his kid from better days. Before the layoff, before the bills piled up, before Lisa took her and moved across state lines. He hadn't seen them in 6 months. The thought of her voice, small and bright, saying, "Daddy," was enough to make him grip the wheel until his knuckles whitened. He could drive away, head to the shelter downtown, swallow his pride, and beg for a cot. Or he could meet Ray, roll the dice, and maybe, just maybe, claw his way out of this hole. The neon sign buzzed above him, flickering like it was daring him to choose. He turned the key in the ignition, the engine sputtering to life. The diner on 17th was 20 minutes away. He had just enough gas to make it. He tried a backup card, declined again. That's when it sank in, he had nothing. Not just low on cash, not just a rough patch, nothing. Every account was in the red, every card maxed out, and no one left to ask for help. He started dialing up people he hadn't talked to in years, a cousin who used to sleep on our couch, a high school buddy who once offered him a car wash job. Even an old roommate he'd screwed over on rent. Nobody answered. The few who did all said the same thing, "Man, I wish I could help." No one offered a place to crash, no one offered $1, not even a ride. They all remembered how he acted when he thought he was big time, cocky, looking down on everyone, posting about cutting off weak links. Now he was the weak link. Back at the apartment, he found an orange eviction notice plastered to the door. Final warning, 2 days to get out or be forced out. He tore it down and crushed it in his fist, but the words were seared into his mind. That night, he slept in his car, parked a couple blocks away so no one from the building would spot him. Sleep didn't come, he just stared at the car's ceiling, heart racing, trying to recall the last time he felt secure. He used to think being on his own meant freedom. Now it felt like being trapped in a coffin. The next day, he showered at a gym he hadn't visited in months, using someone's leftover shampoo. He dodged the mirror, not out of shame, that came later, but because he didn't know the face staring back. His eyes were sunken, lips chapped, skin ghostly pale. He looked like a man aged a decade and a half overnight. After that, he tried signing up for a delivery gig, but a background check flagged his tanked credit score and some fraud alert tied to the stolen card applications. They said he could sort it out, but it'd take weeks. He didn't have weeks. He barely had hours. The hunger wasn't just a pang anymore, it was a force, clawing at him. He started swiping sugar packets from gas stations, filling up on water and empty promises to himself. He kept saying it was just a temporary low, a blip before the big comeback. But every time he tried to open his phone to post a video, his hands trembled. He couldn't fake the hustle anymore, the mask had crumbled. People started noticing his silence. His DMs went quiet, the likes dried up, even the fake mentor bots stopped commenting. That night, he broke his own rule. After all the pride, all the anger, all the blocking, he searched for my name. Typed it into LinkedIn, then Facebook, and there I was. New profile picture, smiling, a new job, HR assistant at some private company, a photo with coworkers, another of me holding a welcome back cupcake. I looked calm, happy. That smile hit him harder than any harsh words could, because it meant I hadn't just left him behind. I'd built a new life without him. He started typing a message, erased it, tried again, deleted it again. Sorry, felt too weak. I need help, sounded too desperate. I miss you, didn't feel true. He tossed the phone onto the passenger seat, pulled his hoodie over his face, and tried to breathe through the panic. That's when he understood real loneliness, not just being by himself, but knowing no one was coming to save him. Not his friends, not Sophia, not the fake mentor, not even me. For the first time, he had no clue what to do next. The next morning, the guilt hit harder than the hunger. He woke up with a stiff neck from sleeping in the driver's seat, his phone buzzing with useless spam emails and a text from the loan app saying his balance had jumped another $75 overnight. He hadn't talked to a real person in 3 days. The last time someone said his name was Sophia, and that was as she walked out the door. He rubbed his eyes and pulled up my profile again, the 4th time that day. There I was, new haircut, nicer outfit, smiling with people he didn't know. One photo from an office party showed me holding a mug with "Survivor" and a gold star on it. Another had me at a table with coworkers, laughing, a cake in front of me that said, "You're back. We missed you." That one cut the deepest. It meant someone cared when I was gone, that I mattered to someone out there. Somewhere out there, people still saw worth in me. But Daniel? No one had checked on him, no one noticed he'd vanished. All his big talk videos and posts? They disappeared like they'd never existed. He kept scrolling through my social media, and one post of mine stopped him cold, a quote that read, "Sometimes the best gift they give you is pushing you out." He stared at it for ages, wondering if it was aimed at him, but too ashamed to reach out and ask. For the first time, he admitted the truth to himself, not just that I was gone, but that I was doing just fine without him. I'd found peace. He had nothing but emptiness. The lies he'd fed himself started falling apart, one after another. He used to think I leaned on him emotionally, relied on him for money, that he was the one keeping me in the game. Now he saw he was the burden I had to let go of. The worst part wasn't that I'd moved forward, it was how easily I did it. I was ready, with plans, friends, a safety net. I had people who valued me. He had none of that, just followers, not friends, clicks, not respect. With the lights out and his money gone, everyone else had vanished too. That evening, he drove by my new workplace, just once, just to see it for himself. He parked across the street, hood up, trying not to look like the failure I'd warned him he'd become. I didn't spot him, I never stepped outside. He sat there, watching the glowing windows of the busy office, picturing me inside, working, maybe laughing, maybe not even thinking about him. That idea hurt worse than the hunger gnawing at his stomach. For the first time, he wondered what it must have felt like for me to walk out that door, to leave someone who didn't care enough to fight for you. He thought back to all the dinners I made without being asked, the traffic tickets I paid, the new shoes I bought with money meant for groceries. Never once did he say thank you. All those late-night drives to pick him up, the quiet words of encouragement, the birthday cakes, he barely looked up from his screen to notice. He'd taken it all for granted, like I owed it to him. And the moment I pushed back, he screamed at me to die. Now that moment played over and over in his head, not just from guilt, but because it was the exact second he burned his last bridge. He didn't know how to make it right, didn't think it could be fixed. But one truth hit him hard, he wasn't better off without me, I was better off without him. That cold, quiet reality settled in his chest like a heavy stone he'd never shake. He didn't plan to show up at my door that day, it just happened, like instinct pulling him to the last place that ever felt safe. But he stood outside like a stranger, unsure if he even deserved to knock. He hadn't eaten in nearly 2 days, hadn't slept more than an hour at a time, hadn't talked to anyone who saw him as more than a ghost. The world had gone silent around him, and that quiet forced him to face memories he drowned out with noise. Staring at my front door, all he could picture was the last time he saw my face, right after he screamed those awful words. What haunted him now wasn't his own anger, it was my smile. That calm, steady smile I gave as I grabbed my purse and walked out. Back then, he thought it was mocking him. Now, standing there, he finally understood. That smile wasn't rage or fear, it was closure. It was the look of someone who'd already moved on. He remembered how I didn't yell, didn't slam the door, didn't even glance back. I didn't need to, I'd been mourning the loss of him long before he said those words. That fight wasn't the breaking point, it was the aftermath. Now, with everything gone, he finally saw what it meant to be the villain in someone else's recovery. He lifted his hand to knock but stopped short, frozen. What could he even say? Sorry felt too small, help felt too cheap. He stood there, replaying everything I did before that final day, how I paused when I saw the mentor's name on his phone, how I quietly saved screenshots of his bank transactions while he bragged. How I stopped making his lunches and started building my own backup plan. I'd seen it all falling apart and got ready for the crash he swore would never come. When he told me to die, I didn't crumble, I just walked away from the ruins. That smile wasn't for him, it was for me. It was the first time in years I put myself first. And that's what cut him deepest, not that I left, but that I was okay without him. He paced outside for 15 minutes, practicing words in his head, but nothing felt right. He knocked twice, soft and unsure, no answer. He waited, tried again, still nothing. He leaned against the door, hoping maybe I'd sense his regret through the wood. But I didn't open it. I was home, he knew it. My car was out front, the porch light glowed, shadows moved behind the curtains. I was there, but I didn't come out. That silence was the final nail. I didn't need to say a word, I didn't owe him anything. That quiet was the consequence he never saw coming. For a moment, he thought about leaving, walking away and pretending this was just another mess he'd get through. But he couldn't, this wasn't just any door. It was the last one, the last person, the last shot to prove he was more than the wreck he'd turned into. So he sat down on the step, back against the wall, head in his hands. For the first time since this all started, he didn't feel like a victim. He felt exactly what he was, lost, worn out, and finally facing the price of everything he'd thrown away. Behind that locked door, I watched quietly, not out of spite, but because some apologies have to be earned through silence. He stayed on that step until his legs went numb, until his back ached, until the streetlights blinked on, casting long shadows across the yard like time itself was pulling him away. But he didn't budge, he had nowhere else to go, not physically, not emotionally, not even in his own head. Leaving felt worse than the cold concrete under him. He knocked twice again, softer now, like the weight of his guilt might change something. But the door stayed shut. He knew I was inside. I could hear the gentle clatter of dishes inside, the soft buzz of the TV, signs of a cozy life that no longer had a place for Daniel. Those sounds cut deeper than silence, they showed I'd built something solid and safe after him, and he had no claim to any of it. Still, he whispered, please, as if his plea could slip through the door's cracks and touch some part of me that still held on to his better days. He hoped I'd catch the tremble in his voice, the way it broke like it belonged to the boy he once was, not the man he'd tried to pretend he was. He leaned in, pressing his forehead against the door, letting it hold him up like it was all he had left. He didn't cry, not because he wasn't shattered, but because he'd run out of tears to shed. There was nothing left to rinse away. A neighbor strolled by, stopped at the end of the driveway, and asked, "You all right, buddy?" Daniel looked up, startled, like he'd forgotten the world still held people outside his chaos, and gave a weak nod. The neighbor didn't buy it but didn't press, just walked off, shaking his head. That moment tore away the last shred of Daniel's pride. It wasn't just that he'd failed, it was that everyone could see it now. He wasn't some enigma or misunderstood genius, he was the guy who told his mom to die and came crawling back a month later with empty pockets and an apology stuck in his throat. Around 11 p.m., I peeked through the blinds, just enough to see him still there, unmoved. I watched him like you'd watch someone you once loved but no longer knew, carefully, from a distance, not with anger, but with caution. His hoodie was pulled low, knees tucked up, fingers twitching like he was still trying to craft a version of the truth that didn't make him look so broken. I could have opened the door right then, ended it all, but I held back. This wasn't the right moment, not yet. Forgiveness isn't something you toss out at the first hint of regret, it's earned in the quiet spaces between pleading and proving yourself. I needed him to sit there, to feel what it's like to be powerless in front of someone who once loved you without limits. He needed to learn that some hurts don't heal with a quick embrace, they mend through time, through waiting, through showing you've changed. I sat on my couch, letting him stay out there. I knew he might knock again come morning, or maybe he wouldn't. Maybe this silence between us was the last thing we'd share. Either way, I wasn't opening that door tonight. The knot in my stomach was too heavy, like a warning etched in stone. When I finally worked up the nerve to approach the door, a faint scratching sound from the other side stopped me in my tracks. I flicked off the porch light, and Daniel glanced up, catching the change, that tiny spark of hope fading from his eyes. That was the real consequence, not rejection, not harsh words, just the truth that not every mistake gets a do-over. The next morning, I opened the door, not out of forgiveness, but because he was still there, curled up on the steps like a package someone forgot to claim. His eyes were red, face sunken, reeking of regret and the rain that had soaked him. I knew this wasn't an act anymore, it was a total collapse. He didn't speak at first. He just looked up, like he wasn't sure if I was real or part of his unraveling. I said, "Get up. Not out here." He stood slowly, every movement stiff and pained, and followed me inside without a word. I didn't offer a hug or ask if he was okay. I poured him a glass of water, set it on the counter, and waited. He perched on the edge of the couch, like he was scared to touch anything, like even breathing too loud might get him sent back out. Finally, he said, "I screwed up." I nodded. He added, "I lost it all." I nodded again. Then he asked the question I'd been waiting for, "Why'd you let me in?" I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "Because you finally knocked like you meant it." That hit him harder than any lecture could have. I didn't baby him. I didn't say everything would be fine. I laid it out clear, a mattress in the spare room, a stack of job applications, and hard rules, 20 days, no free rides, no slacking, no lies. He nodded and said, "I deserve that." I replied, "You deserve worse, but this is what I've got to give." He cried then, softly, not for sympathy, but because he finally felt the weight of being seen and held accountable. I didn't cry. I'd shed my tears 2 months back. This wasn't the start of some heartwarming reunion. This was recovery, slow, tough, and earned step by painful step. But for the first time in ages, he listened. And that's when I knew he was ready, not for forgiveness, not yet, but for the first real step toward becoming someone worth forgiving.